Yo, what is up everybody? Watt007 here, and welcome back to a brand new video on what's the best card to get with your SR Dream Ticket. As you can see on Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links right here, we have a brand new SR Dream Ticket to talk about, and in this guide I'm going to let you guys know what is the best card to get with this Dream Ticket right here. So let's get into it, boys, because I'm excited. So first things first, when it comes to the SR Dream Ticket, straight up, if you do not know what you want to spend your SR Dream Ticket on and you expect yourself to play Duel Links for at least another year, just save it. As you can see right here, this Dream Ticket expires on January 31st of 2023. So if you're like a new player in the game and you're not sure what decks you like yet or anything like that, you might want to save this, or I will give you some suggestions on some really good trap and spell cards as a new player. But for anybody that's been playing the game for like a year or two now, there's going to be not really too many staple cards from the SR Dream Ticket that I can strongly recommend compared to the UR Dream Ticket. There is so many options with the SR Dream Ticket, but there's no good card that I can say, hey, this is going to work great in every single deck, because a lot of the staple spell and trap cards you can get from the SR Dream Ticket don't work for every single deck comparatively to some of the staple spell and trap cards from the UR Dream Ticket. But still, I'm going to give you guys a good amount of suggestions that are related to the current metagame as of 2022 of January here. So without further ado, let's get into it. Also, too, with every one of these guys, I do got to quickly mention, every time you're about to choose what card you want to get with your Dream Ticket, always click the drop down arrow here and sort by boxes so that you make sure that you're spending your Dream Ticket on a card that you can only get from paying money or gems, because the Dream Ticket allows you to get stuff from events too, but you might not want to use it towards event cards. You might want to save it for, hey, you can get it from a box. And another thing too, before you choose which card you want to pick, when you're looking through this list and finding cards that you think are pretty cool, always make sure to click the how to obtain button. The reason why you want to do that is this is so that you can make sure it's not from a structure deck, because structure decks, you simply just have to pay like 1,000 gems to buy it, or you just pay a little bit of money to get the cards guaranteed. So you don't need to go through a box to get the cards. So unless you're like a dedicated free-to-play player that does not want to spend a single dime in the game, I would recommend making sure to not waste the Dream Ticket on a, structure deck. But with that out of the way, let's go through the suggestions. We're gonna start off with trap cards right here, and honestly the only staple trap card I could recommend, especially if you are a new player in the game, is gonna be Treacherous Trap Hole. But again, like I said at the beginning of the video, not every single trap card is gonna work well on every single deck, and that is case in point with Treacherous Trap Hole right here. This is a very powerful card because if you have no trap cards in your graveyard, you can target 2 monsters on the field and destroy those targets. So you +1 because you only use 1 card to pop 2 cards in the field, but this card doesn't work well in every single deck. So if your deck has a strategy where you need to rely on other powerful trap cards like Floodgate Trap Hole, Bottomless Trap Hole, Canadia, and Karma Cut and stuff like that, like running Treacherous Trap Hole in that deck is not going to be a good idea, because you don't want to be in a situation in a duel where you already used those trap cards earlier in the duel. They're in your graveyard now, and now you can't play Treacherous Trap Hole. That's just not going to be a good way to play. So while this card is extremely powerful and probably one of the best cards to get with your SR Dream Ticket, you still got to use it correctly. And if you're a new player, or if your deck is centered around trap cards, or it just simply uses a good amount of trap cards, I wouldn't recommend TTH, but still, if you build your deck right and you rely mostly on spell cards and monster cards for your strategy, and you don't really need that many trap cards in general, or you run a lot of continuous trap cards, maybe running Treacherous Trap Hole might be good. It does see competitive play in Destiny Heroes because they rely mostly on just being able to just get a lot of monsters on the board with mass change and everything like that, and special summoning themselves. The Treacherous Trap Hole works well in that, but this card doesn't really work well in like most other decks in the game. So again, it's a good card, but it's not going to work well in every single duel. And the only other staple card I could recommend is going to be Karma Cut right here. This is a very powerful card where you can discard 1 card and target a monster your opponent controls, banish that target, then banish all cards with the same name as that monster from your opponent's graveyard. This is the only other generic card I could recommend that can work well in a multitude of decks. But again, not all decks can handle being able to discard 1 card in order to activate a activation like Karma Cut. So unless you're playing like maybe a Blue Eyes build, like the only deck that really uses Karma Cut is going to be Blue Eyes, for the fact that they can discard their Whitestone agents to plus and get more advantage later on in the duel. That's where Karma Cut's going to be extremely useful in, is that effect right there. But Karma Cut might not work well in any other deck, or you don't want to discard certain cards, because if you discard those cards, then you can't do your strategy. So again, Karma Cut's a really powerful card, but again, it's not going to work well in every single deck. So Only cards I will recommend from this is Treacherous Trapple and Karma Cut, but at the same time, it really depends on how your deck plays in order to use it. But again, though, Karma Cut and Treacherous Trapple are still cards that can be used in a multitude of decks, so if you are a new player in the game, it's still a good suggestion, because again, you can use this in more than one deck compared to some other cards in the game. And yeah, that's gonna be kind of it for the trap cards right here. There's no really like really good trap cards for like certain meta decks in the game. Trap cards are pretty slow in this current meta, so only certain cards are really good, but there's no like trap cards that really make a meta deck good unless it's from like an event or nothing like that. So when it comes to meta decks right now, yeah, no trap card I could recommend that it's going to be really good for a certain deck. Moving on to spell cards, kind of in the same situation where there isn't really that many super good spell cards I could recommend. So far, the only one that I've been seeing recently is Lightning Vortex, but that varies in certain decks. But this card states you can discard one card, destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. It doesn't work well in every single deck in the game, but it still is really powerful for the fact that if you sack one card, you get to destroy all your opponent's monsters, and it's a non-target effect, so it can play around certain interactions, because certain cards in the game cannot get targeted by effects, but this doesn't target, so it just flat out just nukes your opponent's board by discarding your card. Again, it works well in decks like Blue Eyes, where if you can utilize your graveyard to your advantage, it's going to work pretty well in, but if you don't, it is what it is, you know what I'm saying? This card usually only sees like 1 or 2 copies of in a deck at most, and I haven't really seen many builds that play 3 copies of this card, but it has seen some competitive play here and there as kind of like a side deck card, or just kind of like just a one-of card that is just going to surprise your opponent in the middle of a duel. So I will recommend it because it can work in a multitude of decks, but again, if your deck does not rely on its graveyard in order to play certain effects, I don't know if you should be playing this card. Another card that's pretty decent is Concentrating Current. It hasn't seen that much play in the current metagame, but it's still a generic card that can get you an advantage in a duel. It's on the limited 2 list for a reason. You can target one face-up monster you control. It gains attack equal to its current defense until the end of the turn. Other monsters you control cannot attack the turn you activate this card. This card's really powerful because if one of your big boss monsters has a lot of attack and a lot of defense, you can take that defense and give it to your monster. So if you had like a Blue Eyes White Dragon, for example, you would be able to give it 2,500 extra attack on top of its 3,000 attack to really potentially OTK your opponent, or just make sure that you can get over a powerful monster. So that's why this card is pretty dang good, and it's on the limited 2 list for a reason. But again, it doesn't work well in every single deck. Maybe your deck has boss monsters that don't have a lot of defense. Well, you might not want to run this card, but again, it can work in a multitude of decks, so that's why I want to recommend it. The last card I'm going to recommend right here is going to be Forbidden Chalice, a very versatile quick play spell card that states target one face-up monster in the field until the end of this turn. It gains 400 attack, but its effects are negated. This is a really good card to surprise your opponent, because if your opponent normal summons a monster and wants to trigger its effect on a normal summon, you can chain Forbidden Chalice against it, 'cause it's a quick play spell card, so you can play it on your turn or your opponent's turn, and you can stop your opponent from being able to trigger their abilities. Or by the off chance that you need to get a little bit of an extra boost in the duel, you can give one of your monsters 400 attack to swing over your opponent's monster. So again, really good card, really good versatile card if used correctly, but again, it doesn't work well in every deck. I personally don't play this card because I just never know when to use it in the right situation, but certain decks can really capitalize on it, because again, maybe you're running a deck that needs to only use spell cards, and having Forbidden Chalice be a good way to kind of stop your opponent from getting into their combos by stopping their effects from activating. But again, it won't work against monsters that trigger effects from hand, so that's kind of a bummer, but if it's on the field, you can negate it. Okay, and then I'm going to list off a couple cards that are good in the current meta game right here. First one we're going to take a look at is going to be Swallow's Nest right here. So unfortunately, Harpy Ladies are still a tier 1 deck as of January 2022. So if you want to invest into that deck, it might not be a bad idea, because it is a very powerful competitive deck right now. And Swallow's Nest is one of those cards that is still seeing play in the deck even after it's on the limited 2 list. And due to the fact that it's on a limited 2 list at this current moment, getting only 1 copy of Swallow's Nest is going to be pretty essential to make sure that you can play Harpy Ladies as a deck. And since it's from an awkward box that is from Aerial Assault, using your dream ticket on this card would actually be pretty good, because then you can just focus on the Harpy mini box and get all the Harpy cards from that mini box, and then instead of wasting extra money or gems, you can just go into your SR dream ticket and then just scoop it up from Aerial Assault instead of wasting more gems and whatnot. So you can try that. Just be warned though that Harpies has been nerfed over the past couple months here, because it's been meta for a very long time. So I'm expecting the deck to get hit really soon, but hey, it's still meta, so that's why I'm going to recommend it right now. Next card I'm going to recommend is Magnetic Field, only because Magnets actually got to tier 2 in the Duel Links meta tier list for competitive decks. Magnets has been a very rogue deck in the past year, but it's finally good enough in the meta game to be a meta deck. So it's always been pretty powerful, but the other decks in the game have been more powerful than it. But yeah, right now it's a tier 2 deck, And one of the tech cards that it has in its deck is Magnetic Field, and it's only one copy in most builds that people are playing. People play 1 to 2 copies of Magnetic Field because it does give you a lot of advantage in your duel. And again, this card is kind of in like an awkward box that's not with the rest of the magnet cards, because most of the magnet cards are from a mini box called Guardians of Rock. So again, same situation as Swallow's Nest. Using your Dream Ticket on Magnetic Field might not be the worst idea in the world, because after investing so much money and gems into the mini box, you only need 1 copy of this card to like complete the deck. So you might as well just scoop it up with your Dream Ticket instead of wasting some more gems, potentially getting unlucky in the mini box. So the last card I'm going to shout out right here is First Movement Solo from the Meliodas deck. I think that's how you pronounce it. I can't read. I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Come on here. But this card's really good because you can special summon a level 4 or lower Meliodas monster from your hand or deck. This can get the deck really going for its combo, so it's kind of a must of at 3 copies, because you can get into your search cards, you can get into your fusion cards, and go into Bloom Diva. So last card I would recommend from the spell section. Moving on to the extra deck, I'm just going to quickly shout out a bunch of cards that can be used in a multitude of decks from the extra deck right here, mostly Xyz monsters, because what's really cool about Xyz monsters is that most of the good ones in the game are very generic. So if you have a deck that can run level 4 monsters in it, you might as well fill up your extra deck with these rank 4 monsters, so that by the off chance you need them, you can use them. So we're going to shout out a lot of those, and we're going to shout out some synchro monsters too. First one on the list, we have Mage Sin, and there's a reason why it's shouted out in the recommended for beginners, because it's a generic rank 4 monster where you can detach a material, target a monster your opponent controls, and banish it until your opponent's next standby phase. So you have an opportunity to swing directly at your opponent if they have no other monsters after this effect, because this card can still attack afterwards. And it's able to just get rid of a monster temporarily and really help you out in a duel. Next up, we have Photon Strike Bouncer. If your deck can run level 6 monsters, this card's fantastic too, because you overlay into it with 2 level 6 monsters once per turn during either player's turn. When a monster effect is activated on your opponent's side of the field, you can detach an Xyz material to negate that effect and deal 500 damage to your opponent. Steelstorm Roach, really good card right here, because during either player's turn, when a level 5 or higher monster would be special summoned, you can detach an Xyz material from the card and negate the summon, and if you do, destroy it. So it will be able to stop your opponent from going into boss monsters, which is really handy. Next up, we have Diamond and Dire Wolf. Overlay into this with 2 level 4 monsters. You can detach an Xyz material from this card, target a Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast type monster you control, and one other card on the field, and destroy them. Good thing this guy is a beast, so you can use it to overlay into this card and then pop it and pop one other card. It can be handy in certain situations, because while you are nagging a lot of cards to pop one card in the field, in certain situations it is just useful to have, because maybe you just don't have any other answers, so that's why I'd recommend the card. Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, that's going to be kind of it from the extra deck section here. There's not really too many synchro monsters I'd recommend. Maybe Hot Red Dragon Archfiend if you're playing a Jack deck, because this card's really good for the Jack combo, because that's what made that deck pretty good back in the day. Every's okay. It's not that good in this meta game, but it's still a pretty decent card if you can run spellcaster type monsters in your extra deck, because this card can float and banish cards at the beginning of your standby phase. Then we have HTS Scythemith. Cannot pronounce that. Like I said, Yu-Gi-Oh players can't read. Generic level 6 synchro monster. After damage calculation, once card battles the opponent's monster, you can banish that card and banish this card, so that's kind of good. But yeah, I'm gonna be honest, there's not really that many like really strong extra deck synchro monsters that I would recommend. I'd probably just say stick with the like Xyz monsters. And last but not least, let's go take a look at the monsters. Again, there's not really any generic monsters I would strongly recommend from this list, so I'm just gonna cover just the meta decks of this current meta game and let you guys know what cards to prioritize if you're gonna be building those decks. First of all, we're going to start with the tier 1 deck, and Harpies play Harpy Channeler, Harpist, and Perfumer, and most builds try to play 3 Channeler and 3 Perfumer and usually 1 Harpist, but these are going to be the 3 cards you're going to need the most in order to play Harpies. And out of all 3 of these, I'd probably prioritize Channeler, because this card is the real card that can really get you going into your combos to go into your Cyber/Harpy Lady, because you're going to be able to summon this card, discard an Harpy card, and then special summon a Harpy monster from your deck in face of defense position. Now that you have 2 Harpies on the board, you can synchro into Cyber/, because Cyber/ allows you to use Harpies, one of them as a tuner monster as long as they're both Harpy monsters, to go into the synchro summon of Cyber/Harpy Lady. But again, Perfumer is also played at 3 for a reason. This one's really good because you can summon it and search for a spell and trap card that specifies Harpy Lady sisters, which is really helpful because you can go into your Elegant Egotist, Harpy's Feather Rest, or Harpy's Hunting Ground. So yeah, I would focus on Perfumer and Channeler though, but yeah, Harpist is decent too. Because Harpist is okay too. It's a really good one of the deck, because it's not something you want to always go into, but it has 2 really good versatile effects. You can target a Winged Beast type monster control other than this card, and 1 face-up monster opponent controls return to the hand, so you can bounce one of your opponent's cards back to the hand through just Harpist alone. or during the end phase, if this card is sent to the graveyard till center this turn, you can add a level 4 winged beast monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand. So use Channeler, summon Harpies, go into Cyber Slash, and then at the end of their turn, you get to search for one more card. That's why it's played at 1. You don't want to draw into this, but you want to special summon it from the deck through Channeler so that you can go into a Synchro Summon and get a search for a card afterwards. So yeah, these are the 3 cards you would want to focus on. Next up, Magnets, tier 2 deck right now, and I would probably prioritize on Gamma. Gamma is one of the most played ones right here, because when you normal special summon this, you can special summon a level 4 lower Magnet monster from your hand. So it's going to be able to get you some board presence on the field. And if you special summon Alpha or Beta, you're going to be able to get other effects. Alpha is good too. If you normal special summon this card, you can add a level 8 Magna Warrior monster from your deck to your hand. This guy is going to be able to search for your boss monster, which is really important. So these 2 cards are pretty good to get 3 copies of. Most builds I've been seeing though, like some of the builds I'm seeing right now for Duel Links meta shows 3 copies of Gamma and only 2 copies of Alpha. But again, both of these are really core for the deck, because you need these pieces plus Beta in order to go into Magna Warrior, the boss monster of the deck. But yeah, Gamma's good too, because since you can special summon 2 monsters, you can overlay the 2 level 3s and go into a rank 3 Exceed Summon, which is also pretty useful too. If you're a fan of Yuzu and enjoy watching Arc 5 and you want to play her deck, you might want to use your SR Dream Ticket on getting Songstress right here, a very core card for the Melitis deck. Right now, it is still meta. It's been hovering around the tier list all over the place, but right now it stands at tier 3 and it's still a pretty good deck. And getting 3 copies of this card is pretty important. So if you're like really unlucky in your box pulls, or you just simply don't want to reset the box 20 million times from the mini box, getting that last copy of Songstress might be pretty core here, because again, if you're like unlucky from the super mini, or you know, you just can't get your good pulls from Master Shadow, as long as you can get at least 2, you can get your last copy of it from using your Dream Ticket here. If you're a fan of Jack, going into Crimson Resonator and getting 3 copies of this card is pretty important, because this card's a very core card to go into Red Nova Dragon, Hot Red Dragon, Archfiend Bane, and so on and so forth. If you like to play Fire Kings, Fire King Avatar Arvita is a very core card for the deck right now, because you can negate cards in the field. It's a Fire King monster, so you can pop your fire monsters from your hand and be able to special summon them later in the duel. So a very good card to get at 2 or 3 copies of. If you do play Trimids, this is a really good boss monster to obtain from the deck, because Sphinx, you only really need 1 copy of it. Some players play 2, but most players only play 1. And if you can't get this 1 copy of this card from the box that is from the Sanctuary mini box, you can do that. If you play Blue Eyes White Dragon, Sage for the Eyes of Blue is a really good card to get of, because you can normal summon this card, search for a level 1 Light Tuner monster, or if you have an effect monster in your field, you can discard Sage from your hand, pop that effect monster, and then special summon a Blue Eyes. So really good card. If for whatever reason you enjoy Shiranuis, you can use your Dream Ticket on one of these Shiranui cards. I really don't care if you do. I personally hate the deck, so I'm not going to strongly recommend which is the best one, because I don't like the deck. I don't want to review it, but I'm still going to mention it because it has been seeing some play recently thanks to the new ban list, but it hasn't been tiered yet on the meta list, so who knows. And last but not least, I would strongly recommend Jerry Beansman right here. It's a really good Bean Soldier card that believes he's the strongest warrior in the world, so therefore if you put him in your deck, you get a lot of good luck in your duel. And again, we'll wait and see, because there might be a buff to Jerry Beansman soon, because there's a lot of abilities that are still untested with the card, so hopefully we'll get new like support for this card very soon. So I'd recommend trying to get 3 copies of this card, if I'm being honest, because it's a really good card. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me in today's guide. If this video did help you guys out, smash the like button on the video down below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for more Duel Links content. But that's gonna do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.